What is up, everybody? It is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, and for the first time since what, John? Like Halloween, we get to talk about a win. Yeah. Good God, Bengals finally get in the winning column, and not only do so with a big exclamation point. This divisional game on Thanksgiving night, and the Bengals beat up on the Ravens. The defense looked good. Joe Burrow looked good in his return, and a lot of things to talk about. To recap that, I'm Anthony Gazenza. He is John Sheeran. John, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, except realizing for the fact that the Bengals don't have a Thursday night game for the rest of the season, so I don't know what they're going to do. They haven't won on Sunday since September.
Yeah. It's like, okay. I mean, you would think extra rest on one. I don't know. But that's a good point. That is a good point. But this is the Orange and Black Insider, part of the Believe Podcast Network, BLEAV, and the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. We appreciate you tuning in live or after the fact, however you may be watching us. Appreciate you. Hey, look, even the veterans need rest days. John and I have been doing this for a little while, so we needed a couple rest days to not only because of the holiday and everything, we needed some time to digest, so we took a couple days off. But this program and the Believe in Cincy podcast channel is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That link is pinned in the show description, at least on every streaming platform we're shooting this out to. So go over there and play some bets. Things were all over the map last week in terms of lines and everything, with T. Higgins out, Joe Burrow back in, Trey Hendrickson out. So a little hard to keep track of, and that comes with the territory this year in terms of lines moving and different things, just because of injuries this late in the season. But go to America's #1 sportsbook to go earn yourself some money. Of course, do so responsibly, and of course, do so only in states where they allow sports betting. Not out here in California, they don't allow it, but that's okay. I can still pump America's #1 sportsbook, and of course, FOCO, the fans only company. That link is in there as well to the specific Bengals page. They've got exclusive Bengals merch that you can get your hands on, especially now during the holidays, John. I mean, there's all kinds of different stuff. I know my kids are asking for all kinds of weird stuff, whether it's Bengals or otherwise. I'm like, I don't even know where I get that. But if you want some stuff that not many people can get readily on other sites, shops, etc., the fine folks at FOCO have you covered with all kinds of exclusive stuff, which I think is pretty cool. Bobbleheads and all kinds of different stuff.
I mean, it's the fans only company. It's designed for fans, made by fans. Like, that's the perfect gift for the fan in your life. I don't know how else we can say it.
Look at you. I mean, I'm sitting here spitting out all this stuff, and you just say it in, like, I don't even know if that was 2 sentences. That was like one sentence, and you spit it out perfectly, my friend. And always great to see you. Happy belated Thanksgiving, by the way. I hope you and the Sheeran, thank you. I hope you and the Sheeran clan had a good time, got your fill of food and all kinds of different stuff. I was bouncing all over the place. A little bit unfortunate, but it's a good problem to have, to see multiple different family members and all kinds of different things. And I did get to hunker down and watch this game, John. And I think we were all kind of surprised. We thought, the Joe Burrow return would bring some juice back to the Bengals and that sort of thing. It was the first half was a little bit of vintage week 1, week 2 Bengals under Joe Burrow, right? It was sluggish on offense. They weren't really doing much. They were just doing enough to kind of hang in there. As you and I pointed out on this show last week, it was, hey, can you just kind of keep it close around halftime? Can you keep it close around halftime? Can you do just enough to frustrate Baltimore. That is just what the Bengals did. What was it? 5 turnovers on defense. I mean, they had a red zone interception. They were frustrating Lamar Jackson and everything. We'll talk more specifically about the defense here, but what a way. I know there's some people just tank, which I don't like that mentality in general. I understand if you need a franchise quarterback, if you need certain things, you don't want to win many games, but that's just a kind of a bad mantra or bad attitude, I think, that would permeate through the locker room, particularly with the stars and one coming back for this game. So I think a lot of people were refreshed at the result, and I think a lot of people were surprised at just how swarming the Bengals were. They did a lot on offense, but this defense was just all over the place on Thanksgiving night.
100%. Like, I think, and we talked about it, this game had the possibility of being a lot closer than maybe people would have realized, considering the trajectory that the Bengals were going on defensively the previous 2 weeks, and then the added element, the intangible aspect of what kind of effect does Joe Burrow's return have on the other 52 players on that team, just the coaching staff, just everyone in general in that locker room. We didn't know exactly how he was going to play. I think we referenced a couple years ago in which he was dealing with a calf injury, and he played really rough against the Ravens in week 2 of the 2023 season, but then he started to click and the ball's getting out quicker and he was finding himself in rhythm. Unfortunately, they did not win that game, but something similar in this game, I think, as well. He said it himself. He said that he was really antsy in the first half for obvious reasons, right? He's playing with a metal boot, essentially, a very specialized engineered cleat on, covering his toe to make sure that you're replicating all the muscle tissue around the toe that he no longer has. So naturally, there was an adjustment period, and, he's going up against a defense in an atmosphere that has not always, treated him well. He's carved up the Ravens the last handful of times ever since Mike McDonald has left the defense coordinator.
Statistically,
statistically. Yeah. So that's never been the issue. But I think as the first half went along, he was starting to find his rhythm. I think his throws also they just seemed a little bit like there was a lot of oomph in his upper body. It's almost like he was overcompensating by not having like that lower leg drive that he used to have. And I think as soon as like all that started to settle down, the touch was there, the timing was there. Beautiful throws were made throughout the second half, including obviously, and there was the deep bomb to Jamar Chase in the first half, which shouldn't go overlooked as well. He just started to find himself. And like you said, the defense made this game the blowout that it was, because Burrow, at the end of the day, it was overall a good game, but you can't be that abysmal in the first half in the red zone and expect to win by however many points that they did win. It's only because the Bengals defense came alive and made Lamar Jackson's life a living hell, which has never really been the case when Lamar Jackson is healthy. I think he's still working through some issues as well. Not that that's an excuse, but the Bengals defense played well above over expectation. Maybe that's a credit to a lot of the confidence that they've been building ever since coming off of the bye week. Obviously, there were issues against the Steelers. There were some issues against the Patriots, but in general, the trajectory has been rather positive. So you combine that with the mental aspect of Burrow coming back, him obviously giving the offense an element that you didn't have with Joe Flacco, because obviously Flacco was accurate and he got the ball out quickly, but you saw the ability of Burrow extending plays, and his mobility wasn't really hindered by that injury. So that was like maybe the biggest positive to see outside of him kind of getting his feel and groove back. So all those things combined, it just led to the night that it was. And it wasn't a huge surprise that the Bengals ended up winning, but it was a surprise by how much they won because of the defense and how much they dominated a quarterback that has given them fits.
And that again is the only the second time that Lamar Jackson as a starting quarterback for the Ravens has lost to the Bengals, whether it's Joe Burrow or not. But that, I think, just based on Joe Burrow's overall performance, had the defense not come up with that slew of turnovers and just frustrating Lamar Jackson all night, we probably would have saw a game that was, 32, 33, 31, 30, you know what I mean? Like, it would have been probably one of those close games either way. And instead it completely went the other direction for the Bengals. And that's what you and I have talked about. I know a lot of other people have talked about too. If you're not going to force the punt, if you're going to give up yards, if you're going to do certain things, you have to create turnover. This is very reminiscent of that 05 Bengals defense where they were getting especially against the NFC North, 5 turnovers a game at one point. I mean, unfortunately, it's a big ask, but that is kind of where things are with this defense. But it wasn't just, hey, oh, what a lucky bounce, or, some people were complaining about the Lamar Jackson tuck rule thing and all kinds of different stuff. It wasn't just so much that they were just moving to the ball a lot better. They were moving to Lamar Jackson when he did scramble a lot better. There were some big plays. And even when they gave up the big one to Isaiah Likely, Jordan Battle comes up and knocks that ball out and completely changed the entire trajectory of that game with that fumble that went out of the end zone. So, I mean, look, it's still not perfect, but the young guys are getting more time. The young edge players, not named Shamar Stewart, are getting more time and looking promising in that time. But this is one of those, again, it's like back up against the wall. Your playoff chances are extremely slim. If you want to even be in the conversation, you have to win this game. And then they did that. And not only did they do that, they did that in convincing fashion. So it was really refreshing. I don't know, and we can talk a little bit more about this later, but I don't know, like, if this was just kind of a 1 week spurt because of Burrow's return, or if that's just the injection that you needed. And like you said about Flacco versus Burrow, we've talked ad nauseum about how much of a pleasant surprise Joe Flacco has been. They showed his stat line on Thursday night, which was 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in the games played. They've only won one game, but I think you hit the nail on the head, John, in that just less predictable on offense. It's not going right to Chase on a quick one. It's not going right to, Chase Brown on a dump off pass. It's ad-libbing. It's making different things happen. And I think that's what Joe Burrow obviously excels at and did again on Thursday night.
There's a lot of conversations as well about how this game could have went in a completely different direction offensively, because again, like, I don't think we can overlook how abysmal they were in the red zone in the first half and how much there was like forced throws, forced fade routes. The fact that they didn't even have the threat of the run at the 2-yard line. Basically, the Ravens gifted them the ball there in the low red zone, and they weren't able to get any points out of that. There's some things to be said about the overconfidence and relying on Burrow to kind of do special things and ridding the balance that you achieved on offense with a different quarterback in there. And it's like the same conversation we had 2 years ago with Jake Browning in there. There's still that to be dealt with and to be addressed, despite the goodness that this win provides. There's obviously, in terms of just not only just their offensive inconsistencies there, also the reason why this on the other side of the fence you can have some optimism though is because the offensive line played really, really well in this game. And you had shutouts from both tackles in Orlando Brown Jr. and Marius Mims. Tyke Harris played well. I think the reason why this unit looked a lot better than maybe in past games with the offensive line play well is because the guard play is stabilized tremendously. I was intrigued with the fact that Dalton Reisner started over Jalen Rivers last week for the first time in a while. I didn't know if that was because Rivers was hurt. He was on the injury report. Reisner started again this week. Again, could be injury related, but regardless, he's just the better option right now. And he's a veteran. We kind of expected this sort of stability that he could provide as soon as he got his feet under him and, got more than just a week's worth of preparation time after he was signed in late August. So if this is the version of the offensive line that they're getting with Burrow getting more comfortable, that is the reason why this offensive production can be sustainable, and not in a way where it's like it's the Joe Flacco insanity run, but you're having a quarterback that is dynamic with his mobility and the ability to create out structure. All that is great, but when he's also not being pressured 40% of the time like he has been in years past and not getting 3 sacks a game, that just allows you to do so much more. And again, I want to combine both that point and the point of not putting it all on Burrow and still, leaning on some of the under center run games that you had. And maybe Burrow checked out a lot of those plays because we saw him under center and make some checks at the line and then go into shotgun. Again, that definitely could be a factor into this, but there also still needs to be hey, we found success with different elements of this offense with a different quarterback. We need to start implementing that with the franchise quarterback and combine the best of both worlds now. It can't just be Burrow being Superman and expected to win games like this. There needs to be lessons learned about what you did when he was injured and what he's able to do now he's back fully healthy. Combine that with this offensive line, and that is the promise, but it needs to get there.
You answered a question from good friend Ryan Yunt here, who has done some work with Ace and Zim, I believe, in the past, and then also NFL Network. He's a good follow on X, by the way, if you follow him. But I wonder, you kind of called it. It was I waver on that. Is it Zach calling it? I think Burrow has a lot of autonomy.
Yeah.
I think he probably checks out a lot of that stuff. And to your point, look, I don't mean this as a slight to Burrow whatsoever. This wasn't a Superman Burrow game. And like you said, it didn't really, he made some fantastic throws, the Yoshi touchdown and some of the deep outs to Chase and that sort of thing. He made some fantastic throws. Don't get me wrong, but this wasn't the, what was it a couple of years ago, 500 plus yards. And, it wasn't like that kind of game. And they didn't really need that given the turnovers that the defense created. And also, like you said, the offensive line doing its job. That was great to see. I hope that wasn't also just kind of a blip in the radar. Oh, Burrow's back. We're playing better. I don't know, but I do think there is a semblance of this off. We're not talking about the offensive line as much this year. Have you noticed that? We're not talking about it being such a problem this year. I don't know if that's a credit to Scott Peters. I don't know if that's a credit to who, but we're just not talking about them being such a big problem this year. It's more, okay, Burrow's hurt. And okay. I mean, Flacco, yeah, he got the ball out quick, but unless the last couple of games, he minimized hits and sacks and that sort of thing. And like you said, this week too, a team that even when their defense collectively isn't one of the statistically best defenses, the Ravens defense, they know how to pressure from different areas. And so the fact that the Bengals were able to mitigate that and allow Burrow to make plays. And also, I mean, it's just a blessing that he first game back that he's not getting his head beat in, whether it's hits or sacks or both. It's just a blessing that didn't happen, obviously.
100%. And yeah, like I think with regarding the offensive line, Dylan Fairchild has been pretty much exactly what they hoped he would be. He's not spectacular, but he's just getting the job done. And he's incredibly productive for a rookie guard. I think he's better than what Cordell Wilson was at this point in his career. Like that's big check mark there. Ted Karras is who he is. Marius Mims is, I think, around the same player that he was last year, but again, that wasn't necessarily a problem. You still want to see some more growth with him in certain areas, but a guy that you can just be out there on an island at right tackle, handle your job, no issue. I think the only problem this year in the offensive line has been Orlando Brown Jr. and how he's kind of regressed a little bit. Maybe there's some wear and tear with his lower body, and he's still getting beat around the edge sometimes. But again, when he plays like he did on Thursday night, the entire offensive line is just a unit that you can absolutely win because of, and not just have to survive behind, which was the case with Burrow in so many years. And again, with Burrow, you did see that accuracy, when it's on and he's able to hold the ball, move his eyes around the defense, and able to maneuver the pocket in ways that Joe Flacco couldn't. Because when Flacco got pressured, when the pressure was in his face, the play was over, and that's just what it is, right? And also he was trying to avoid further injury to his already injured shoulder, right? So that's again one of the reasons why, yes, he was playing well, and the offense clearly wasn't the problem when he was out there and they were still losing, but at some point, you have to realize the better quarterback who is able to get healthy is the better quarterback in Burrow, and he's able to just do more, right? Regardless of the production that's out there, Burrow can do more, and that's what you saw on Thursday night, and that's why he is going to be out there regardless of how many wins or losses the team has, regardless of how well the backup quarterback is playing. If he can do everything in his arsenal in terms of extending plays and while still being one of the most accurate quarterbacks when he's actually on, because obviously he had a lot of completions in the first half, and I think it was barely over 50% completion percentage in this game. That's obviously the exception to the rule with him being the 69% completion percentage in his career, right? So all that combined is why you want him out there regardless of what the team is and why were able to get him out there as his recovery progressed.
it's also crazy to me, and maybe I was alone in this, but Burrow having 32 attempts at half. I
Mhm.
mean, going into the third quarter, you're like, he's on pace to throw 64 balls in the first in the first game back. But I think that also is a little bit about Joe Burrow and how he plays the game, etc. I just you mentioned Mims. Mims is a guy. It's just really it's about consistency with him at this point. I feel like when he has those a game like this, you're like that's a dominant player. Those are the traits showing up. That's a dominant player. And then there are other games, not that it's abysmal, but it's like, yeah, okay. And young guy, again, we talked about all of the limited college play, particularly later in his college career. So that may be to be expected, but like you said, we're just not talking about the offensive line, which is pretty refreshing for the first time in like 3 or 4 years. So the other one that we got to talk about is the Bengals defense, and we've got some comments from a bunch of people in here about James Hawley defense plays like this, we can beat anybody, and we've got some other stuff that yes, we're gonna. I love all of you in your comments, but a little patient. We've got a couple more segments where we're going to touch on some stuff. I promise. But I still don't know what to make of this defense, because this was a game wherein you felt like who the Bengals put out there on the defensive line was the correct matchup situation with Lamar Jackson. They were able to kind of just frustrate Miles Murphy. I think hit him deep in the red zone at one point, ran him down. Miles Murphy, by the way, and Joseph Ossai just playing their cojones off over the last handful of weeks. Miles Murphy was a guy who chased down a big play all the way down the field at one point, made the tackle that way. It was like, how did that guy make that tackle? But the point is it's I still kind of am like, is this the anomaly, and is this the Burrow being back and that sort of thing, or is it now heading into what we had all hoped with Al Golden? I think there was a little bit more blitzing. You had, I think, was it Jalen Davis and others kind of coming in there a little, doing the Mike Hilton stuff a little bit. So you saw a little bit more of that, and that was effective. And then there's also, John, the argument of, well, Lamar's not healthy. He's got, the hamstring and the ankle and knee or whatever, he's got all kinds of stuff. And that I don't look at Lamar Jackson as an exceptional passer, but I look at him as a pretty dang good one. He was off the mark on a lot of throws the other night.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if that was Bengals defensive frustration, if that was Lamar's not healthy, a little bit of both. I kind of go in that camp where it's a little bit of both, but we are seeing improvements to some degree of the Bengals defense.
It all starts up front, man. It's as simple as that. Like, you had in this game, Miles Murphy, Joseph Ossai, Chris Jenkins all win as pass rushers at if not a high level, a above average level. Like, in terms of true pass sets, Joseph Ossai had a win rate of 21.1%. Miles Murphy 18.2%. Chris Jenkins 23.5%. Chris Jenkins,
that's crazy.
Chris Jenkins was closer to the quarterback on average compared to the NFL average for defensive tackles and NFL defensive linemen in general. It's one of his best and most underrated games he's had as a pro. He had 4 pressures in this one. Joseph Ossai had 8. Miles Murphy had 5. Rushing Lamar Jackson is obviously a different animal compared to rushing the quarterback against other passers. There's a different technique to it, and there's an awareness that he can obviously step up and escape, or step outside and escape. But they were winning cleanly, and they were winning in sustainable and consistent ways in which it was frustrating him. And regardless of Lamar's health, like, he was losing the ball more than he obviously should have. Like, there were a handful of fumbles, and there were rush throws, and there was the tip pass to the line. I believe that was by Miles Murphy as well. It was just disruption at its highest order, and disruption that this defense has needed for the first 12 weeks of the season. And that's just where my mind is. Like, this is the defensive line that they decided was going to be okay for this year. And for the first 10 weeks, it was one of the main issues into having this defense be the worst defense in 48 years of DVOA history in the first 10 weeks, right? now it's at a point where, like, yes, like the vision of having these young guys develop into these roles, it is now bearing fruit. The fact that the fruit took 12, 13 weeks to grow is inexcusable, but the fact that it is here now is why you got this game. When the pass rush is hitting like this against an offensive line that has been developing younger guys, obviously not, I don't think they obviously played their best game. Maybe it's an offensive line that's probably on the downhill, if not, but this was still a defensive line that had so much to prove. And exactly right, Joseph Ossai, Miles Murphy playing like they have something to prove. Ossai has a bunch of incentives baked into his contract with sack numbers. He's really close to hitting that with 5 on the year. Miles Murphy is in probably a prove it year because he's got the 5th-year option looming over him next year. Chris Jenkins Jr. played the most snaps of any defensive tackle in this game on the Bengals defensive line. He was tasked with, stopping Lamar Jackson in both phases of the game, and he definitely won. When those 3 players are playing anywhere near like this, the entire rest of the defensive operation can fully operate, if you will. And again, like, it's great to see, but it's still in my mind in a very pessimistic way of, like, the fact that it took this long to get this way is why they're 4-8 ultimately, which sucks, but they're here now, and now they have a chance to actually do something.
And sustainability, right? I mean, can this be more of a I mean, you can't expect huge output every single week, but can you make this a little bit more of a consistent thing? But you're right. It made life easier on the secondary, and even, like I said, even when they made the Ravens offense was able to make a big play, the Bengals defense responded, whether it was the battle knocking out the ball from Isaiah Likely or what have you. But yeah, I was very impressed from a number of players. And, it's kind of like you said, that lineup along the defensive line is a little bit of a no-name defense, even though there are a couple of high-round picks in there. They're not household names to a lot of other people who don't watch the Cincinnati Bengals. But, I mean, that's like you said, that they had envisioned these guys. And you said 12 games this year. I would even go further than that, because you had Chris Jenkins last year. You had Miles Murphy I mean, this is not just 12 games in the making. This is like 2 to 3 years in the making for some of these guys. So to see it come to fruition against, look, the AFC and the AFC North is not where it's been. We know that in terms of competitiveness, in terms of, I don't even know what I don't want to say talent. There's talent all over the place, but teams are just, there's not really dominant teams this year, it feels like. And even when you have a good team like the Rams, they lose to the Panthers, who are, by the way, resurgent. You've got the Jaguars just kind of winning games. However, you got the Bears and their coach tearing off his shirt in the locker room, and they're winning games. And but it's to me, it doesn't. Those are the Bears game, for instance. The Bengals went toe to toe with them with their defense not performing. So I guess I'm just kind of like, well, it regardless of what you think about Lamar's health or the Ravens or them being 6-6 and the Bengals 4-8, like, this was a quality win. It was a statement win. It's just more about now they have to basically, I mean, I don't even think there's a room for one loss here. They got to win out. And you and I talked about it. This one coming up, we're not going to preview it yet. We'll probably be back later this week to preview it, but this one coming up is, again, that mark on the calendar where you go, okay, this is kind of the turning point of where the Bengals season is going to head going into Buffalo.
100%. I mean, it obviously is a quality win because they were 7.5-point underdogs on the road in division on Thursday night. A scenario in which, like, the road team just doesn't win those games. It's an incredibly rare situation. So to not only win, but to win convincingly, 100%, it made a statement that it needed to make. And yes, it wouldn't have been this much of a blowout if they didn't force 5 turnovers, and you cannot expect 5 turnovers every single week. I think they do expect to be around the ball every single game, and playing a quarterback like Josh Allen, which, that is coming up, like, those opportunities will come despite all the good things that Josh Allen does. So you are expecting a couple of plays to kind of go your way and give you some extra possessions, but they got 5 extra possessions. And even in one of them, they didn't get any points at the 2-yard line again. So there's that aspect that It's the opposite of the Vikings game, in which the Bengals had a crap ton of turnovers, and that one you just didn't expect that to happen again, and obviously it hasn't. So these games are kind of the blip in the radar where, like, yes, everything was kind of going their way, but in general, they were the better team against a division rival on the road in the brightest of lights, with everybody watching with full stomachs and your quarterback coming back. It was the spark that this team needs, and you're right. If they need to win out and get some help. So when both those things are true, it's almost like they can't lose again.
This is a weird way to say it, but it's almost like when you had Browning or Flacco in the lineup, they needed to get like 3 turnovers a game from their defense and keep going, whereas they may need like 1 or 2 a game with Burrow under center. But yeah, I the Bengals improved to 4-8, not where they wanted to be, but they're still alive. They've got a couple of big games in front of them, including a rematch against the Ravens in just a couple Sundays from now. So, these next couple of weeks are gonna say a lot. Before we move on, John, what did you think about the decision to go for it after, on that 2-yard line? You didn't gain a yard, right? I'm in the like be aggressive, faith in the offense, faith in the defense. I like that, but for me, it's kind of like, look, man, it was Burrow's first game back. It's on the road. It's on a short week. It's all these things where I just kind of like read the room and take the 3 points. Now, granted, the Bengals ended up running away with things. You didn't really know that at the time, but I kind of felt like I know analytics say X, Y, and Z, and I know situational football says X, Y, and Z, but for me, I kind of was like, you're just not even and I think you could criticize the play calling, obviously the 3 plays before that. And so that is probably where my biggest contention was. But at that point, if those were your play calls, my thing was like, just take the 3. You're on the road against the division opponent. I don't know.
Our biggest contention's the line, because again, to be at the 2-yard line and to put your quarterback in empty, regardless, like if Burrow called that timeout, nobody, you're not an empty. We're gonna have the threat of a run at the 2 freaking yard line. Like that, it's ridiculous. Like that sequence of events, it showed me that it doesn't matter if this guy isn't fully healthy. If they see him out there, they're going to expect him to put on the cape and be Superman. Because no quarterback needs to be an empty at the 2-yard line. It doesn't matter how efficient, how creative, and how amazing you are out of structure, and how much magic that you can create. Doesn't matter. Give the threat of the run at the most obvious spot of the field where you do run the ball. Yeah. Because if you're an empty and it's not a quarterback draw, you're giving the defense an advantage that it doesn't deserve. So I do agree with going for it, because it was basically an extra possession, and the Ravens gifted you to the ball there. So like, might as well just try for the 7 points, because if not, they're back at the the 0-yard line after 20. Right? So that's the reason why I would have gone for it. But oh my God, man, run the ball at least once and show the threat of the run.
Yeah. I think my stance on that was really more predicated on the 3 preceding plays. And it's kind of like, at that point, nothing's working. Just take the points and go. But I do understand also, that's a good point too, about like, hey, you've backed them up against the end zone. So I get that too, but it didn't really matter. Bengals ended up having a convincing win against Baltimore, which is a good thing. And like I said, they're 4-8. They are still technically alive in the playoff race, the division race, and they got to win some games. This is the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network and the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. Get this show and a slate of other great Bengals podcasts on the Believe in Cincy, BLEAV in CINCY. So just think about Believe in a different spelling, and Ted Karras' Cincy hat. Believe in Cincy. There you go. And get it through your favorite audio streamer. Leave us a review if you can, hopefully a positive one. You can also get this show through a variety of video platforms, whether it's our YouTube channel. You can also click the show icon if you're watching on YouTube to subscribe. You're laughing, John. Did I screw up here?
No, I saw a comment that I'll
address later. Okay. Might it be the comment of the week? The new segment that we do with it? Yeah. Okay. No, but subscribe where you can. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Keep it to Cincy Jungle's Facebook, where we stream there, as well as put all of the Cincy Jungle articles. And of course, look at John's lid that he's wearing today too. Go to A to Z Sports and check out his awesome coverage of the Bengals in the AFC North. Yeah, did I do enough? Oh, well, I didn't do enough, John, because I didn't mention our wonderful sponsors again. Fans only company, foco.com. Go get your exclusive Bengals merchandise. And of course, America's number one sportsbook, FanDuel. Go check out there. John, according to FanDuel right now, and this is, of course, we're doing this early in the week here, but according to FanDuel right now, based on Bengals injuries, based on what we saw Sunday, and of course Thursday night with the Bengals are 5.5-point underdogs going into Buffalo. So I don't know. The over under is 51.5. So I think the weather is going to be a little brutal there, as to be expected this time of year. It might be cold and all kinds of different stuff, but those are two of the bigger lines, courtesy of FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, 5.5 is not what they opened as. They opened as 6-point underdogs to Buffalo. So that means that some of this has been placed on the Bengals recently, and the line is being moved closer to a more neutral line. And that makes sense because, Anthony, it is the 1st of December. It is the month in which the Bengals typically play their best football. They're 15-7 in this month. This is going back to 2020. Joe Burrow is 10-3 in starts made this month. He's only been an underdog in December 3 times. And the biggest line against them in those 3 games was a 3-point spread against the Denver Broncos back in 2021. The Khalid Kareem fumble return game in which they won by 5 points, a very ugly game. But betting against Joe Burrow in this month, a questionable decision. So maybe some people are kind of seeing that, and maybe if not an outright win in a hostile environment against a Buffalo team that is clearly very hot and cold, I think it might be a little bit closer than 6 points.
Yeah, and as of Sunday, I haven't. We'll talk injuries here before we have one more segment and get on out of here. But the Bills, at least against the Steelers, were out both their starting offensive tackles, and they just kind of keep racking up some injuries here. So some good news and bad news with the Bengals on their injury front, at least as of the beginning of the week. T. Higgins looks to be on his way back into the lineup, which you never know with concussions, of course, and that was a pretty gruesome thing that happened against the Patriots with him. But you figured with that mini bye that you get after Thursday, maybe there's some extra rest there, and that is why he said. By the way, poor T. I feel like the Bengals always play the Ravens on Thursday night, and I feel like he's like so often injured against them. But regardless, he looks to be trending back towards the lineup. And a lot of chatter, John, about Trey Hendrickson and him being week to week. Why is he not on IR? Why wasn't he on IR? Is there some contractual stuff? I don't even want to speculate based on the character that we seem to know about Trey Hendrickson. But regardless, he seems to be kind of doubtful at this point to play against Buffalo.
And the problem is he's been doubtful immediately in like the last handful of weeks. And this is why there's some scuttlebutt about what's actually going on. I don't think either of us have any idea necessarily. What we do know is that he suffered a hip injury against the Packers in week 6. He had to miss week 7 on a short week against the Steelers. And then he wasn't completely fully healthy against the Jets, but he played anyways. He took a really hard shot from Olu Fashanu or John Simpson, I believe, the left guard for the Jets. Aggravated that injury, clearly visibly in pain on the ground, missed the rest of that game, hasn't played since. And the reason why him not having played since is interesting is because there's obviously been more than a month since that game. They could have placed him on injured reserve, but they didn't. And the reason why they didn't, you have to assume, is because they believe that he had a chance to play in any game since then, and he hasn't. Not only has he not played, he hasn't practiced. So there's the speculation that the injury has either gotten worse or hasn't gotten better. His treatment hasn't really shown any signs of progress. Hip injuries suck, right? Jamar Chase missed a month with one, and he came back fine and everything like that, but not everyone is the same. And this injury, was not just a hip injury, because later on, like a couple weeks ago, like the pelvis addition to the listing was added as well. So I don't know if it's spread to his pelvis. I don't know the exact injury, right? All I know is that hip injuries are painful as hell, and clearly his specific injury became worse when he re-injured it, which is probably why he's still not ready to play yet. It's just the fact that he hasn't practiced, and every time that Zach is asked about it, it's a really tense, like, always week to week. It's just it's a blunt answer like that, and you don't know what sort of conversation is going on inside that team. But I think you're right in which speculating about any sort of resentment about his contract or resentment about Trey in general, I think it's just reckless on our part. It's for everyone else to decide about that. I think what we know is that it's a brutal injury, it's a painful injury that just clearly hasn't gotten any better. And knowing the person that Trey is, the psychopath that he is in terms of wanting to play and always giving his 100% effort out there, it would seem like if he's able to play, he would play, and because he's not playing, it's because he's not able to.
And you also have to think about the mechanics of that position, right?
Right.
I can't remember which hip it is that's bugging him, but there's a ton of bend, there's a ton of planting. That's what comes with that position. So if you can't either, if it's your, again, I can't remember exactly which hip it is, but if you can't plant, if you can't twist, if you can't, use your leverage on an offensive tackle the way you think you can, you're at that point, you even as great as Trey Hendrickson is, you're going to be a detriment potentially to the defense. So we all want him out there. I'm with you, John. At least I think this is what you're saying. I don't see this as like, I'm going to stick it to the Bengals because I don't think it's any of that. It's just, I'm not healthy. The shame of it all is that this is a little bit of a trend with Bengals stars and getting big contracts. You saw Trey Hendrickson. He didn't get the contract he wanted, but he got a pay raise and he's been hurt for a good chunk of the year. Same with Joe Burrow. T. Higgins missed a little time, which we kind of know that unfortunately that comes with the territory of T. Higgins. You saw it in the past with Vontaze Burfict and others that they had just extended. And unfortunately they just get a little snake bit in that department. But right now it does seem to be trending towards T. Higgins playing, which is good. And you want that against this Buffalo team, by the way. And Trey Hendrickson probably not, which is a bummer. But if we're going back to our segment a couple of minutes ago, if you're able to get the same defensive performance from the Bengals defensive lineman that you're looking at, then that they're putting out there, then get after it.
The good news is, like, they're at a point in which, like, arguably the best part of their defense in recent tape is the position that Trey is playing, and the fact that Osai and Murphy are holding down the fort at a better rate at this point right now, it softens the blow of not having still your best overall defensive player out there. And it would still be nice if Trey could give them 15, 20 snaps a game in obvious pass rushing situations and make the rest of the lives of the defensive line better. But, clearly this team has envisioned a future without him, and that future involves guys like Murphy stepping in and fulfilling larger roles. And so long as Murphy is able to continue this pace, because it's not just been the Ravens game, like it's been a trajectory over the last handful of games in which his production in terms of getting after the quarterback, maybe not always finishing, but generating pressure in similar ways that Hendrickson has been able to do, in which you're converting a lot of speed to power, pushing the pocket, and then disengaging at the right time to disrupt the play and disrupt the pocket. Like, that was the scouting report with Murphy coming out. And if he were to be a successful pass rusher, it was going to look like what it looks like right now. So to see that coincide with this unfortunate development with Hendrickson is at least a little bit of, it's the sweet of the bittersweet news, if you will. I think you're muted, man.
It's interesting to think about the Bengals defensive ends and who they've drafted in high defensive linemen in general. Is it more disruption versus statistics or gaudy sack numbers, that sort of thing? I don't know, but let's get just spend a couple minutes now, because obviously this is kind of the biggie right now. You've got I got to pull up the schedule here. You've got the Bills on the road here. You've got the Ravens at home coming up, and then you have, what is it, the Dolphins in Miami, and then you have the Cardinals in Cincinnati on the 28th, and then you end the year with the Browns. 2 tough games, 3 other winnable ones. We've seen this team do a little bit of everything this year. Lose ones that they should have won, and some of the teams that they lost to were maybe a little better than we initially expected. But regardless, the Bengals have 5 games here to go. They probably need to win them all in order to get the division and get into the playoffs. I know it's 1 game, 1 win. A lot of people are overreacting, but I mean, how much did Thursday night inspire you, I guess, is kind of what I'm asking you, in terms of them being able to make a run out of this thing?
I mean, a little bit at least, right? Like, it's just the parallel to last year is just so obvious. The fact that they're 4-8, just like they were last year, and you know that led to a 5-game winning streak, and this time would have to be a 6-game win streak to have like a reasonable chance at this. If they were to win out, they have like an 80% chance of making the playoffs. So, which means that Baltimore and Pittsburgh have to split. They both those teams have to lose 2 more games. I think Pittsburgh, I believe they play each other twice, and then like Baltimore just has to, each team has to just lose one of those games, and then Baltimore has to lose another game, right? So there's help that needs to be had if they were to win out. But of course, the comment that I was laughing at was from Dan the Man, who said it would be classic Cincinnati fashion if the Bengals win at Buffalo, beat the Ravens, and then lose to the Dolphins, which a couple weeks ago the Dolphins were completely dead in the water and looking at firing their coach. They even fired their GM, and they've kind of turned things around a little bit.
They're winning games. They're winning games.
Is no longer very much of a layup if the Bengals are good. So that game is probably going to stay on Sunday Night Football because there's going to be some very outside playoff implications and just 2 teams that are kind of catching fire when the season is coming to an end. But yeah, it's just this time of year is when they play typically their best, and regardless of injuries, it's when the quarterback is feeling himself the most. And when he has his 2 best receivers out there, and Chase and Higgins, you have confidence in the offense competing against anybody. And so long as the defense remains opportunistic and is able to generate pressure, which is, again, a similar theme to last year when they were finding the ball and getting after the quarterback, anything's possible.
The biggest thing to me, too, is that this wasn't the Ravens game and how Joe Burrow played. And I would have expected it a little bit. That first half, I'm like, yeah, this is just going to take a while for him to get it back, right? And then second half happens, and you're like, hey, there he is. And so if that's an indication of where things are heading, if you're saying, hey, he only really needed that half of football to kind of get his mojo back, so to speak, then the Bengals are in good shape. If for some reason, again, five turnovers by your defense just doesn't happen very often. If for some reason the defense falters, etc., will Burrow be able to play some hero ball going forward if they need it in these next 5 games? I mean, really what it comes down to, like you said, I mean, you could talk about the Dolphins game and the Cardinals. I mean, it does come down to the Bengals needing to win these next 2 games. I mean, it has to happen. And even if they drop 1 and they're still mathematically alive, I don't know that I see things happening in a way that we all want, but they have to win these next 2. Obviously, this one, they're going to do the 1 game at a time thing. We know that, but Higgins coming back is a big deal. And look, after all of the things that the Bengals have been through, all of the quarterbacks that they've cycled through this year, they're still in the conversation as of December 1st. And so, I mean, again, for those who are saying tank and, get a high pick, that's not fun football for me personally to watch or cover. So, I know even if this ends in a 7-win season, you'd be like, oh, I wish they lost those games. But, You want them to compete and you want them to be in it late in the season. That's what you want.
I think you just want the team to realize where its faults are and make decisions that reflect what those faults are, and not have, wins at the end of the season negate how the first 12 games were just thrown into the toilet. Like that at the end of the day, that is the fear that everybody has, and the way to overcome that fear, I think, differs, because there's no reason why the Bengals can't finish the year strong and make a decision like they did last year, in which they at least assessed blame at some direction. Unfortunately, it was, unfortunate for Lunaruma, it was directed at his direction, and they moved on from him. And yeah, if they can realize that there needs to still be changes regardless of their quarterback carrying them to wins here in the final month of the year, that's all that matters, right? And that's why, for me, it was never about like they need to tank. It was like, are they even good enough to even pull off these wins? But of course, this team is just impossible for them to bottom out when Joe Burrow plays like Joe Burrow. And as long as he's out there, they will always have a chance, and they will probably never be as bad as they need to be in order to pick like first or second overall.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's a whole different discussion. And I know we got to start getting out of here, but you don't really, if you feel like you have a franchise quarterback, a couple of really good wide receivers, etc., you don't want to be picking.
No,
at least.
And I was just saying,
maybe 1 year, maybe one. Yeah, no, I know. But maybe 1 year after, as the Bengals did when they got Chase after Burrow, and he was hurt that year. But like, what I'm saying is that's what I don't understand about the tank crowd at this point for the Bengals, because it's like you have pieces, you can be competitive. I don't know. I don't really understand that mindset. But let's drop the mic and get the hell out of here. What do you got for us, Sean?
It's actually surprising to me that it was this late in the show where someone finally referenced the post-Thanksgiving interview with everyone eating turkey. But I think what James Hall is referencing here is Melissa Stark stuck a microphone into Joseph Asai's face when he was in the middle of eating NBC prepared turkey leg, and Asai didn't really know what to say. She was like,
and his eyeballs were like golf balls, man. They were like, he was like,
What's even funnier is because Orlando Brown Jr. was right behind him. He was looking at him like, dude, are you okay? Like, what the hell?
Do I need to do the Heimlich? Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, William Wagner, I don't think has ever spoken to any media ever, because no one ever wants to talk to the long snapper, but he finds himself on the broadcast eating cold crab and being shocked that it's cold. And it's just like, it seems like none of those guys were ever prepared for that moment. Of course, I think it's the first time that the Bengals were ever in that situation, because it's the second time that they've ever played on Thanksgiving. It's the first time they've ever won. And obviously that feast is only reserved for the winners. So I don't know if they're ever going to play on Thanksgiving again, but at least they know what to do now.
Did you see Burrow's reaction to the crab too, when they're like, oh, you got to pull up the legs? He's like, nope. Nope. Oh, goodness. That was kind of an unhinged end to Thanksgiving football, which I loved. I thought it was hilarious, but a lot of classic reactions. And I thought it was cool too, because really it was kind of a team win. We talked about the defense, we talked about the offensive line, we talked about Burrow, and everybody was up there, right? Like everybody was up there, and it was just one of those, you could tell, regardless of however this season ends, you could tell it was like kind of a collective sigh from the team, like, we finally got the win. But we're going to get on out of here. Again, our thanks to America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, and the fans only company, FOCO. Go to the Believe in Cincy podcast channel. Check out our show and a number of others. We appreciate it. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got all kinds of different stuff going on. But John, we got to get out of here. Happy, again, belated Thanksgiving. We're now into a different holiday season, and hopefully the Bengals give us something to be extra joyful about going forward.
Adios.
Adios.